Skid Row has performed with Lzzy Hale 2 shows over the weekend. They have made their debut with Lzzy Hale as their temporary lead vocalist. There is a bunch of video making the rounds online, as you would expect. And as you would expect, Lzzy Hale belted it out brilliantly. I mean, this, to me, it's funny. I actually got an email just before I was going through the fan email, just before I came on the air today. And this was interesting. And this actually hit me. That this would possibly be the case. It seemed crazy to me initially, but now maybe not so much. Somebody, I don't have the email right in front of me. I read it and I deleted it, but somebody wrote to me that they never heard. Well, I had 2. This is interesting. I had 2 different emails. One email saying they never heard of Lzzy Hale, but they thought that she was great and Skid Row should make her the lead singer. And then I had an email from someone saying they didn't really know anything about Skid Row, but liked the band. They were Lzzy Hale fans. Now, initially, that can sound crazy, right? How could you not know Skid Row? How could you not know Lzzy Hale? Either side of it. But not so much, because remember, these are really, really very different demographics. Lzzy Hale is significantly younger than the guys in Skid Row. It's a completely different era of music. First Skid Row album came out in 89. I don't know if Lzzy Hale was born in 89. So you see what I'm saying? It's like, Halestorm has a big fan base and obviously a big successful following and a big catalog of music now. But there are a lot of people, as we know, that are older, that are fans of the 80s, that are just stuck in one genre or one era. They don't follow any new bands. They have no idea what's going on in current rock. So to them, they might be hearing of Halestorm and Lzzy Hale for the first time if you're some 55-year-old person who just time stopped for you in 1990. And there's a lot of people like that out there. Just listen to the same classic rock songs over and over again and are locked into one period. And then if you're younger, you're 30, and you grew up into Halestorm, you don't know. I mean, Skid Row's not on bills with Halestorm. You might not know 80s bands. So as crazy as it sounds, there is some logic to that. So I think Lizzy's in front of people who don't necessarily always know. I'm sure her fans showed up, but more Skid Row people and vice versa. So that's an interesting dynamic to all this that I never really considered until I saw some of those emails come in today. But somebody said, oh, she needs to be the singer or whatever. Well, look, this is a fun thing and it's a cool thing, but Lzzy Hale has her own band and it's a very successful band. I mean, as it stands now, it's, by comparison, Halestorm is way more successful than Skid Row in 2024 in terms of the money they make, the records they sell, airplay, all of that. So, she's not leaving her band. That's her band that she writes the songs and plays guitar and sings and is like co-headlining festivals to join Skid Row. It's just not going to happen. And look, and I'm sure, and we know there's a lot of bands that multitask and musicians that multitask and are in more than one band at a time. But that never really works when it's 2 bands that tour a lot. It never works because there's conflicts and it creates problems. So again, you got to take this for what it is. And there's people like, wow, she sang really well. These are people that haven't been paying attention to Halestorm because Lzzy Hale's an amazing singer. So the fact that she could sing the stuff and she did what she did shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But if you are of the thought, well, that's the answer, well, yeah, maybe you could consider that if she didn't have a band that was a modern rock mega band right now that is headlines or co-headlines festivals. Come on. I'm sure if there was a conversation, it was like, hey, Skid Row guys were like, hey, we'll work around your schedule. We'll only work when you don't work. But then again, that burns out these musicians. A guy like Miles Kennedy, I don't know how he does it. He jumps from Slash to Alter Bridge to his solo stuff. It's a tough thing to do. And I don't see that happening. And Skid Row the whole time have said this was just to finish off these shows that had been booked, and they're going to address who's going to be the next full-time singer in the band. I seriously doubt that will be Lzzy Hale. I just don't see how that'll work. I'm sure they'd love it. I'm sure she'd probably like it. I'm sure a segment of fans would like it, but it's just not realistic. And obviously, they have 2 more of these shows, I believe, or 3 more of these shows with her before she goes on to her own stuff. And then we are going to eventually hear from Skid Row as to what they're thinking here long term. Do they bring in an unknown? Do they bring in somebody else that's established and known? Or do they do what the vast majority of people want, and that would be to bring back Sebastian Bach? And Sebastian said on this show he totally wants to do it, and he said that, Sebastian said something about having to send an email. There was a misunderstanding. Hopefully he did that. Because, there's going to be a decision made here soon, and we'll see. I don't know what those guys are thinking and what's in their head. And by the way, Skids with Lzzy Hale are playing in Reno, Nevada, I think like next weekend. I think maybe even this Friday. And I don't know. I've never been to Reno, and I'll be in Vegas, so I don't know if I can get a cheap flight because it's like an 8-hour car drive. I might try to get over there and see it and get a little idea what's going on if I can. But as far as these first 2 shows, by every measure, very successful, sold out, which again is also not a surprise because Lzzy Hale has a huge following. And not a surprise at all to me that she can sing because she's a great singer. Joel says she was born in 83, so she's 40 years old. So yeah, she was. So when the first Skid Row album came out, she was 6 years old. It's a different generation. Guys in Skids are 60. It's a 20-year difference. Here's Mark in St. Augustine, Florida. Hey, Mark.
Brother Trunk, love your show. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, buddy.
Hey, so you were talking about Lzzy Hale earlier and Halestorm. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to tell you about the first time I saw them in concert. They were on a winter tour with Seether and Shinedown about 14 years ago. And I had never heard of Halestorm, never seen Seether. So I go. Halestorm comes on, first band. Great show. She sings her ass off. Great band. Excellent. So Seether comes on. Great, same thing. Great show. They sound great. Ton of great songs. So for their encore, they start playing the opening chords of Broken. So the crowd's kind of getting into it. And Lzzy comes out and sings Broken with Sean Morgan. And it was fucking unbelievable. Unbelievable. So if anybody doesn't know about Halestorm, they rock. She's a great singer. And if they want to hear her sing Skid Row, they actually have a covers album, and they cover Slave to the Grind. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. It was great. Thanks for taking my call, bud.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I've, again, it's odd to sit here and talk about people not knowing Halestorm, but Lzzy doing this Skid Row thing is obviously there. Like I talked earlier at the start of the show, there are people out there that are just, I know many people personally that are my age. They're like, I don't know anything past 1986. They just, time stops for them. I don't understand that. But maybe that's because this is my life, and it's my career. I couldn't do that if I wanted to because it's my responsibility to keep up to some degree as best I can. Even though even for me it's hard because there's such a glut of stuff out there. But yeah, there absolutely could be an older person who's 50, 55 years old who's, grew up with Skid Row, but they have no idea who Halestorm is. It's crazy to think about, but very, very, very possible. And I caught some of that on email today, which was really interesting. But I think Halestorm has about 6 records out at this point, and the new one's good, but the previous one, Vicious, I really like that one. Probably was my favorite one they've done. It's heavy. And Lzzy's a friend, by the way. I mean, she sent me a guitar. She's been on this show countless times. By the way, I mean, we had her on with her and Amy Lee together when they were touring together, when it was Evanescence and Halestorm. So, you know what? With all this going on, I will send her a text, actually, and see if she wants to come on. Maybe we can't do it tomorrow because we're doing the whole Canadian thing, but maybe even, and we got Naomi on Wednesday. So I'll see if I can maybe put her on Thursday if she's up for it, and have her call in and just talk about what it was like doing those 2 shows. And there's 2 or 3 more coming up, and what else she's got going on. We haven't talked in a bit, so maybe that's something we can do. I'll actually work on that, see if she's able to do it. 844-686-5863. Open phones right now for the remainder of the hour about anything you want in the world of rock. Here's Cubby, who's joining us from Illinois here on Trunk Nation. What's up, Cubby?
Hi, Ed. I've seen the Carterville, Illinois show with Lzzy and Skid Row, which was freaking amazing. She did such a great freaking job. They had one little hiccup with Quicksand Jesus early, but that's what makes a great live show because it's all warts and all.
Yeah.
But no, she was amazing. Looked awesome. And then, can I hit one real quick thing?
Yeah, but hey, Cubby, before you do, I got a question for you. Yeah. Are you a big Skid Row fan? Do you really know all their songs?
Okay. Let me preface this with, I am your age. I am 58.
Okay, but do you know the whole catalog? Because I want to ask you some stuff about the set list.
I go back to the first album all the way through Subhuman Race. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, do you know the new record? The last record, Gang's All Here?
Gang's All Here, yes.
Did they do anything from that record live?
They did. Yes, they did. Well, they did Gang's All Here.
Okay.
Now, which record is Psychotherapy off of?
Psychotherapy. It's a Ramones cover. That's what Rachel sings.
So they do that one too. So
they've always done that. Yeah, that's on the EP.
So anyway. But
hold on, Cubby, because I haven't seen the set list. I'm curious what they did with her set list wise, because there was a clip online of them playing Riot Act, which is from Slave to the Grind, which I don't think they've been doing much.
That's what I didn't want to. I mean, because if people haven't seen it, I don't want to disclose too much.
Oh, it's all online. But did they do anything from Subhuman Race?
They closed at Riot Act and Youth Gone Wild.
Did they do anything from Subhuman Race?
No.
God, I don't know why they ignore that record like that. So basically, the set was the first 2 records and a couple things from the new one.
They start with Slave to the Grind, and they go from there with the first 2, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, thank you, Cubby, for the phone call. Appreciate it. It's interesting because Skid Row have, if you count up all their records, 3 with Bach, I mentioned the 2 with Johnny, there's 2 EPs, there's the new record, so that's like 8 releases. But in reality, they're only playing, for the most part, songs from the first 2 records still. Now, I get those were by far the biggest records, but I still think, I still wish, and look, I know I talk about this myself, so I'm answering my own question, but I wish bands would just dig a little deeper sometimes, because, you don't have to, I know you want the audience as engaged as possible, but you got to catalog. You can intersperse some other stuff. Sure, you're going to lose some the attention from the audience for a song, but big deal. I mean, I wish the artists would do it for themselves, and they do it for the hardcore fans that do know that stuff. I'm not saying every song, but I'm just saying there's a better way to mix it up. If you got 7, 8 records, you're playing songs from 2 records essentially, and maybe 1 or 2 songs from your newest record. It's like, maybe I've seen bands that have made deeper tracks become well-known live songs because they feature them in every show. I mean, there is a way to do it in a balanced way. All right, so has been a little bit since I spoke with this lady, a great, great musician, singer, and a friend for many years, and now, temporarily at least, the singer in Skid Row for a few shows. Joining us live is Lzzy Hale. How are you, Lzzy?
Hey, man, how you doing? Trump Nation. It's so good to hear your voice.
So good to hear your voice, too. I got to tell you, before we even get started, I have been noodling around. You were so kind a few years ago to send me one of your signature Explorer guitars, and I've been noodling around on it. I may start to learn Smoke on the Water soon.
I am so proud of you, Eddie.
We're going to jam at Rocklahoma, Lzzy. You and I are going to jam at Rocklahoma. I'm going to bust it out.
Dude, hey, if you want to bust out some Smoke on the Water on stage, man, you let me know. I'm here for you.
No, I'm better off just introducing the bands there. But I bring up Rocklahoma because you're on it again. I'm hosting it again coming up Labor Day, and they just announced the single day tickets available and the time slots for everybody. So always fun to see you out there, and we've had some good times out there. Sometimes running from tornadoes, but for the most part, good times.
Yeah. Which, as you know, you can blame us for. We joke about naming your band the correct thing, and it's become somewhat of a curse because we'll be at more festivals and they'll be like, "It's been so great," except for when Halestorm plays and there happens to be weather. So be careful when you name your band, kids.
What was the craziest environment you guys have played in so far in your career? Has there been one thing that really sticks out where it was like really, really dodgy?
Well, there was one that we were unknowingly in a lot of times when it's like severe weather and people know it's coming, you'll have some warning, they'll put people aside, they'll, postpone the show, that kind of thing. We were playing in Chicago. This is years ago. We were out with Evanescence, and we, because of the incoming weather, Evanescence had to cancel, but we were still on stage. And so it kind of happened without anybody telling us it was. And so we kept going. And so we were playing in, it was sideways rain and literal like tiny hail and all that was coming at the stage. And we still had like 4 songs to play. So we kind of turned to each other like, well, nobody's saying to stop, so let's keep going. So we literally played. It was like singing in the shower with like on full blast. It was really wild. And the next day we took all of our equipment because our equipment was just soaked in what, like RJ was getting wet back at the drums. It was just cascading off the keyboard. We went the next day to a place where they could kind of retract the water, kind of dehydrate the water out of our equipment. And it was like 8 or 9 gallons of water that we took out of our equipment the day afterwards. So, but it was crazy because the photographs that came from that show, like still resurfaced on the internet today. They were great photos. So if anybody ever gets to like perform in the rain, there you go. That's the only real upside to that. I don't recommend it because afterward they were like, "Why didn't anyone tell you to get off the stage?" I'm like, "I don't know. Nobody did. Nobody saw what was going on." And you can get electrocuted, so I don't recommend doing that. Everyone is very concerned after the fact.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that when it happens, at least in my experience, just being hosting stuff, is that it comes out of nowhere sometimes. Like, I'll never forget, I was on stage at Rocklahoma. I don't think you guys were playing it that year, but I was on stage and they have weather tracking on the side of the stage. And the guy came over to me and in the middle of a band set, he said, "Walk out with this mic, stop the band and evacuate the crowd." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's beautiful and sunny out there right now." He goes, "Nope. Yeah. It's not going to be in about 2 minutes. Do it." And I walked right out in the middle of a band playing. They were looking like, "What the fuck is this guy doing?" And I'm like, "You guys got to stop. You got to go. And the crowd's got to go." And then you're right. I remember it went black and sideways and it was like hail and it was like the craziest thing ever. So you got to be careful when you're out there. And even if people are telling you stuff's coming in and even if it looks nice, it can be pretty nasty. You got to be careful.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I think we just need an Eddie Trunk to travel with us so that it can be a voice of God.
Right. That's just what people need. So listen, I want to, first of all, I want to talk to you about some Halestorm stuff, but obviously you have played a couple shows with my old friends, Skid Row, coming in a fill-in situation here. The response has been phenomenal. One of the things that I always loved about you and connected with you over many years ago is the fact that even though you're younger, you love a lot of these 80s acts, whether it was Kix or Kiefer or Skid Row. You've always been open about how much they've meant to you and the influence they had on you. So tell me about getting the call to do this and how these two shows have felt for you to be out there singing with Skid Row.
I'm absolutely over the moon. It started out as kind of humble beginnings. Rachel Bolan asked me at a mutual friend's birthday party, at actually Nick Resculinitz's birthday party. And, of course, then he called my bluff a couple of days later. He's like, hey, were you serious about, wanting to fill in for these days because it's happening now? And I said, absolutely. Let me clear my schedule and make sure I can do it. And so then we were a go, and neither one of us really understood how much bigger this was. Like it hadn't sunk in yet until after they announced it. And here we are, with no rehearsal yet. Just kind of here I am now. I'm filling in for these guys, and it was just so beautiful because these are the men that raised me. Skid Row was a part of that. Like from before we started the band, before we started Halestorm. Because I was 13 when we started Halestorm. I started listening to Skid Row when I was about 11. And, they were part of that group of people that you mentioned that really raised me on rock, that made me found out that I was different than all the other kids in my grade. Nobody was listening to that at that time because it was around 96. And so it's such a beautiful full circle situation for me. And then just the response has been amazing because we have 2 shows under our belt now. And I'm hearing from people that have been seeing Skid Row since 1987 and are just raving about what I bring to the table. So for me, it is friends helping out friends, but it's also this beautiful milestone in my life where I'm literally being challenged to fill in the shoes that I've always wanted to fill, from being a kid. So it's wonderful.
When you talk about having the impact that the band had on you, obviously they're great songs, but the other thing about it is, for being honest, it's incredible vocals from Sebastian Bach on those records.
Absolutely.
And when you were coming up at 13 years old as a singer and you heard those records, did that lead vocal and hearing that singing have an impact on you as a singer?
Oh, absolutely. All I wanted to be as a singer growing up was a dude in an 80s hair band. Like not a chick in an 80s hair band, but I wanted to be the dude. I wanted to be Sebastian Bach. I wanted to be these, Tom Kiefer, these men that held the world in their hands, when they hit those high notes.
Men that look like chicks.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pretty, it would have been a pretty easy transition.
Right.
But yeah, it's crazy because, I think about it. So when, then after it was made official, I'm filling in these dates. Rachel and Snake, both sent me the set and here's all the songs we're going to sing. And so this is such a beautiful opportunity because I get to deep dive. Now I am, forced into having to deep dive on these records and the inflections of Sebastian Bach's vocals, the arrangements, the timing. So I was literally treating it like it was an Olympic sport. I'm on the on the stationary bike, singing Skid Row, making sure I can get through a set, making sure the high notes are there, and it was crazy because I've been annoying the hell out of my bandmates because they've been widowers to Skid Row for the past couple of weeks, so that's all I've been doing and listening to. So they know all the words too. But yeah, it's just really wonderful. And then to be able to perform these songs with these guys who are the same. It's the same thing. These boys are perpetually 15. We're all in a bus together. I'm on tour with the band. This is crazy to me. So my young self is screaming, because it's like, can you believe it? And I also feel this immense calm and comfort with these guys. And to be able to deep dive with Rachel and Snake on the lyrics and how certain songs came about. We talk about Quicksand Jesus and how Monkey Business was made and recorded with Michael Wagner. So it's been a beautiful experience for me. And I would have done it just for the sake of helping somebody out. But now it feels almost selfish to me because I'm like, I'm getting so much out of this experience.
Did you have any input in the songs that you're doing, or did you make any requests, or did they say this is the set and this is what we want you to do?
Well, there was a small debate on whether or not to put in Quicksand Jesus versus something other mid-tempo, and I was. They gave me a lot of freedom, but to which I kind of tossed it back to them, being basically saying, "Look, I'm here to serve. So make sure that you do everything that you need to do." But I cannot wait to sing Quicksand Jesus. So, because it's one of my all-time favorite Skid Row songs, and kind of have always wanted to sing it, and have never actually attempted it, even in like karaoke and all of that, because it's a little bit of a deeper cut. So, they have fulfilled everything and more for me, and I hope, and from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing, I think I'm doing the same for them. So,
yeah, and I mean, kudos to you for wanting to do Quicksand, because that is just an insane vocal and one of my favorites too. So I'm glad that you want to do that one, because that's an amazing track. It's always been one of my favorites. What's been the most challenging aspect of it for you so far, if anything?
I think the most challenging aspect for me. Actually, there's a couple things, because really, in a whole, all of this has been a challenge for me. But a few things are, I really wanted to see what it was like to perform an entire set without playing an instrument except for vocals, which I've never actually done. I've guested with people and got up and sang songs without playing a guitar or a keyboard, and but I've never literally, like, stepping into somebody else's shoes. Not only am I getting up and singing these songs, but I'm also fronting the band. I'm, in charge of keeping, the energy levels up and the breaks in between the songs, making sure everything's said. And so, that's a challenge. But I think that the biggest one for me is in the moment, making sure that I'm not freaking myself out too much over, songs like I Remember You, right? So everybody knows that song inside and out. So there's a fine line between, I really wanted to honor everything in that song and not take, liberties and, make it into my own. These are songs that everybody knows. So really just kind of keeping conscious of that. Whereas I'm not getting up and covering Skid Row songs. I'm getting up and making them, into the best versions of what they actually are. So that's been a beautiful challenge as well. And you know me, Eddie, I like saying yes to adventure. So I feel like if I, I'll usually say yes to jump off the cliff before I know if there's a parachute. So
do you know, I'm curious, because I am, having literally grown up with those guys and known them. I used to go see him before Sebastian was even in the band. So I go way back, but I literally know every track on every one of their records, even the records that, after Slave, and the records they made with Johnny and all that stuff as well. But my favorite Skid Row record, as those guys know, is actually the third one, Subhuman Race, which is crazy heavy. And I know every once in a while they'll do Beat Yourself Blind from that record, if that at all. But do you know that record by chance?
I do. I don't know it as well as the other two, but I remember, I know the guys have talked about that being, they went heavier, and a lot of people didn't necessarily take to that from the people that knew them from, the surface level, I only know I Remember You fans were very like weirded out by that. But I love the fact that they did that record, because I feel like, and this is, again, I have a new appreciation for them as bandmates, because they are literally a gang. They're like a gang that you want to get into, that I hope you wish you were a member of. And so I feel like as artists, like, I'm so grateful that they were willing to take that risk and go outside of themselves and not just kind of do the same records over and over again, because it makes me feel as someone who has her own band, sometimes you can feel weirded out by that from the powers that be and the pressures of this business, where, you need to keep doing the same thing that you're known for over and over again. It's like, no, we evolve as people the same as anybody else. And so these albums are a snapshot of how they felt in their life. And so I very much appreciate that record.
Yeah, they're the only, the record wasn't commercially successful. It came out in 95. Bob Rock produced it, but it's very heavy, and I've talked to them a billion times about it. They don't like it so much because they were kind of internally fighting, burnt out, tensions, whatever. But to me, it came out in the music because it's so aggressive. It's so great. And, to your point earlier, they're the only band from that era that had mega success on the debut, but got heavier instead of chasing that success and getting more commercial. And there's not another band I can think of that did that. If you have a debut record, sells 5-6 million copies and has 2-3 huge radio songs on it, most bands are guilty of chasing that and getting more commercial and going more radio. With Slave, They went harder, and then Subhuman, they went even harder at the expense of that. And I always thought, whether it was intentional or not, from a creative standpoint, that I thought that was amazing. Even in the time, I thought it was incredible that they did that.
Oh, absolutely, because it was the rock star move to do, because they were chasing what got them excited, what they felt. I mean, you think about like Rumors, right? If they hadn't been falling apart, during that record, would those songs be what they are? No, right. Of course not. So kudos to them, and for not following the pack. But they've always been that way, though. For me, what carried Skid Row with me, like even throughout the early aughts and the post grunge era, was the fact that they didn't mind the grit. They've always, even on those, the debuts and the cleaner records that they did early on, it was just, they still had that, dirt under their nails and, blood in their teeth, kind of attitude toward it, regardless of whether the songs were softer or not. So it was kind of a natural peeling back of the onion for me. So yeah, again, kudos to the guys for doing that. And also kudos for them for actually still being able to, I mean, I know that they've had some lead singer problems and all that, but just from my, standpoint, hanging out with all those boys in the bus and doing rehearsals and shows with these guys, they all still like each other. They're still making, the same, fart jokes from, the 90s. It's a lot of fun. And I think that's a beautiful and rare thing.
Oh yeah, like I said, I've known them since we were kids and growing up in New Jersey, and they are absolutely, when they were at the top of the world, the bottom of the world, now they've always been the same people, which I think is a credit. It's a total credit. I mean that as a compliment. It's great. You have 2 more shows left scheduled with these guys. May 31st, which next weekend, Sparks, Nevada, which is Reno, Nugget Casino Resort. Then June 1st, Hard Rock Live Sacramento is the final one. Is there, that's it, right? Or is there any side of you that would like to do this when possible? If they talk to you and like, hey, this is really going well. I know you have your own band. Your own band does amazing things, but was this just like a Band-Aid, or is there some discussion that this could be more than this?
That it definitely comes up a lot, and especially in the last week after I've kind of, I think I passed the audition. I told the guys, I said, look, I've, committed, some part of me to being able to do these shows with you. And I said, and I'm not ever going to lose that. So I told him, I said, look, if there is something that comes up that I can do, I'm absolutely willing to do that, and I don't see this being the last time at all. So,
well, because it's interesting, Lzzy, because, it used to be, and I talk about this all the time, that it used to be like if an artist was in a major band, but was also doing another band, it was looked at as like, oh, there must be trouble in the main band. No more. Yeah. I mean, it's the norm for most people. Most artists have at least one other thing that they do. I mean, somebody like Mark Tremonti has 4 things that he does, or Miles has 3 things. These guys, but it does become also a challenge with juggling and scheduling. So it sounds like, I mean, I don't know how much they want to work, but it sounds like you would be open to entertaining the idea of continuing with them.
Oh, absolutely. I love doing it. I mean, I'm sure even from, all of the small videos that I've kind of been posting around since the last, 2 performances. I mean, I have a blast, so it's not a burden for me. And, let me put it this way. It'd be a waste of, all the studying that I've been doing to only do it 4 times. So, I'm definitely willing to take a stab at it. And whether that's a permanent fixture in my life or not remains to be seen, obviously, because schedules, but that's kind of where we're keeping it, where it's, I told Rach, I'm like, dude, let me know, and if I can, I will.
Right. Because interestingly, today, I guess Snake did a podcast and said that they don't plan to go back to Sebastian Bach, which, of course, when anything like this happens, that's the immediate speculation, and that's what the fans all start to rally about. So that's only natural. Those guys have been pretty steadfast against it. Bach was on with me not long ago saying he'd love to do it. Doesn't seem like they're reciprocating in that way. So assuming that stays the case, I mean, it's either going to be bringing in someone else, or it sounds like you'd be willing to kind of like, as long as they can work around your schedule, continue to do this.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy because I had never thought about it, in that way until recently, in the last week or so. And it's just it's a beautiful thing to be a part of, and what it's actually inadvertently doing for me. And this is something that I guess is new. And I am a bit of a sponge, so I take inspiration from everywhere. But it definitely, it leaches its way into the way that I think about my own band and what we do with what we, so it's, there's no part of this that is a burden in any way. Like I said, it's just kind of like, hey, when can we fit these things in?
Wow, it's interesting. I mean, because they don't have anything after these 2 shows, so there is some time for this them to, I guess, figure this out, and everybody to just take a breath and then figure it all out as to what they want to do. So they don't, because as you said, they've had a lot of singers and there's been a lot of turnover. It's really important what they do next. Makes a lot of sense. And look, I'll tell you, I mean, the reaction to you being in there has been great. And I'll tell you something else. And I never expected this, and this is really interesting, and this happened on this show in the last week, which led me to want to reach out to you about this as well. I never took this into account for a second, but I have had people, whether they're listeners that have either emailed me or called into this show, who have not heard of you or Halestorm, but are big Skid Row fans, and they're older. As you know, like, when Skid Row started, if you were, most of those people are probably 55 now, the average fan, 55 to 60, right? There's an age gap there, right? So unfortunately, there's a lot of people, and that's the age I am, that stopped. They're not like me where they follow music all the way through. Their listening stopped in 1990 and they have no clue. Yeah. They just listen to their old records. And for those people, they're like, wow, this woman, Lzzy Hale, where'd she come from? What a voice. She's great. And then I've actually heard from younger people who are huge fans of yours who didn't really know anything about Skid Row beyond maybe 18 in Life or something. And they're like, wow, that band's really cool. So, there's about a 20-year age disparity here. And I think both sides, like, I never accounted for this, but maybe there's Halestorm fans seeing Skid Row for the first time and Skid Row fans that are just learning about you and Halestorm.
It's very true. So something that I love to do, regardless of whoever's band I'm fronting, but is go and talk to people. So I got to, sign some things and take pictures and talk with, a lot of walks of life over the last weekend. And it was just that. There were two groups. There were the groups of the kids that had the Halestorm shirts on, and they're like, I had to go back and do my homework about Skid Row. Because, and luckily my dad still had some tape, that kind of stuff. And then you have their diehard fans that are, coming around and have been seeing them forever. And it was just so beautiful to see those worlds collide, and then be able to, gather this, this new experience, that our fans are having, because they've never seen me do something like this before. And then you get these beautiful compliments from people that have been diehard Skid Row fans. So that makes you feel great about what you're bringing to the table for these boys. So yeah, that's really been the most beautiful thing about it all, is that everybody's getting introduced to something new. And it's become in a, not to make this into an event, but it kind of is, because in a time where there is so much negativity and people are fighting and there's people being arrested and a lot of things, burnout that's happening in our industry right now, this is something that kind of is a little outside of that and bringing everyone together. So I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I had never accounted for that, because I live music my whole life every day, and I just I love the old stuff, but I keep an eye on the new stuff and all of that, and it's like I never accounted for that aspect of it, because like you said yourself, you're such an old soul, growing up into this stuff, that I never thought that, wow, there's a lot of people that love Lzzy and love Halestorm that maybe have never gone to a Skid Row concert before, but they are now because she's singing, and vice versa. So really cool aspect of it. Well, okay. Well, capping the Skid Row portion of this conversation, it sounds all positive, and it sounds like, these last two shows will not be your last. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say. Absolutely. And I can't wait to see everybody this next weekend, and it's onward and upward.
Wow. All right. Well, maybe my buddy manages Skid Row, Rob. Maybe I can tell him that he can stop taking the demo submissions. I just talked to Lzzy. You don't have to listen to any more demos.
You're fine.
Okay, let's shift gears to your band, Halestorm, of course, and give us the update. What's going on there? You got a tour coming up, I know, kicking off in July. We mentioned Rocklahoma, some festivals along the way. New music coming. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. It's a strange year, because instead of us taking 3 months off to do a record, or, hey, now we're only focusing on touring, or we're only focusing on other avenues, we're kind of doing everything all at once. So we've had a couple, just kind of 3-week sessions in the studio, and we're finishing up new music, which has been so exciting. We've been recording with Dave Cobb, of all people, and he's just amazing, and I think exactly what the doctor ordered for where we're at in our life. And so we're really excited about new music, but then, we're touring all over the States this year, because we spent so much time in Europe last year. So, we kick it off with I Prevail in July, and then we're going in the fall, we're going out with Evanescence to Canada for all the people up there. And so it's how we live, Eddie. This is life. We just keep the train rolling down the hill. So it's all very exciting, and I can't wait for you to hear the music, and I can't wait for everybody to see everybody this summer at all the festivals, and we just have a great year coming up.
How far along are you on the new music? Is it being recorded? Is it all written? Where do things stand as far as that?
This has been an amazing experience because Dave Cobb is he's like half wise old oak and then half like ADD like 5-year-old in the sandbox, so which works very well with with our little camp in Halestorm because we're all perpetually 15 years old anyway. And so it's been a beautiful process of we've been doing all the things. So I've been writing during our off time, but then also we're writing and recording in the studio, but kind of all at once. So as it's being created, we're getting the final takes. So we have, half of the record is done. And then there are some things that we have one more session to kind of go in to, after our next tour, to kind of finish everything up, put the icing on the cake, if you will, and make sure we have everything there. And then it should be kind of sewn up. But it's been really beautiful because, we've been recording actually out in Savannah, Georgia, and Dave Cobb has a house. And if you can imagine, it's just the four of us staying in one house, no distractions because it's Savannah, Georgia. They love their tea and they love their food, and that's about it. And unsupervised. So there's no managers, there's no crew, no tour, and nothing going on. So in a lot of ways, this record feels like our beginnings, when we were all just kind of living with each other in the same apartment, and every day is something new. Everything is ready to record, ready to go. So whatever you do, as long as you're chasing what gets you excited, it's going to, get down on tape. So it's just been a great experience, and I'm looking forward to it, the finished product, and being able to, tease everybody with dates as to when we're going to unleash it.
For people that don't know, who aren't in the music industry and they don't follow producers and what have you, Dave Cobb, who I've met and interviewed, and I know his work. He's worked with, I'm a huge Rival Sons fan, and he's worked with them almost on every record, and they're actually signed to his label. But he's even done a recent Sammy Hagar record that was really good. He's done a lot of different stuff, country stuff as well. But all the artists I talk to that work with him, he has a very unique way of working, from what I understand, and things happen very live and spontaneously, and very organically and different than a lot of people's approaches. Are you finding that in the way you're doing it? It sounds like you are, because it sounds like you're even writing some stuff on the fly, which I've heard many artists say that even sometimes when they're kind of noodling and getting set up, they'll come up with something and then Cobb will just say, let's track that right now. Or Glenn Hughes told me once that Dave Cobb recorded his lead vocals on a record he did with a band called California Breed. He didn't even know he ended up using it as the keeper vocal on the record. So he works in a kind of unique way, from what I understand.
He really does. And a real-time example for us is that there have been a couple songs where we'll have forgotten to put on the click track as a guide. And then that ends up being the take because we were all playing with each other and there was a different energy. Or he really understands the line between when you're excited about something and it's happening, and then that post after that line when you're trying too hard to rock, or you're trying too hard to be a singer, or you've memorized it too many times. There's a fine line with performance and getting magic on tape, whereas a lot of people are, we all do it, but you shoot for perfection, right? But somewhere, if you're shooting too hard for that perfection, the human element gets lost, and then the magic gets lost, or it just sounds like you're reading it, or it sounds like you've played it a million times and you're tired, or you're thinking about something else. So for a band like us, it's really worked. And it was actually nerve-wracking in the beginning because we went in and, you always have like your bank of songs you've written or like riffs for days and like, okay, what do we start with? And Dave was very adamant about not having a plan, which was nerve-wracking. I'm like, wait, no, we have to have a plan or it's just going to be chaos. What's happening? I don't know how to work like this. And then, after a couple of days, I'm like, this is actually really nice because every day we just get in the sandbox and we play, I brought, a Lego set, you brought a rocket. Let's see what we can do with this. And so it's been really beautiful to see these things develop, and almost the music telling you what to do, not the other way around. Like I'm so used to going into a studio where it's, okay, we have our 15 songs that we know we want on the record, and we're just going to do a song a day and get them all done, recorded. This is completely different because he doesn't want to lose, again, that intangible magic that comes with the excitement of when things are new and you're creating and you don't have time to think, you just got to get it done. And so it's been beautiful to kind of, see all of that come together.
You think you're going to get music out this year, or are you thinking next year?
You know what? I've learned this. I can make all the promises in the world. I would love to do that. I'm hoping that we'll at least have something to show before the end of the year. But I know how this goes. I end up like promising dates, and then something always happens. There's some recall from mastering, or something doesn't work out with numbers or with whatever it is. It ends up happening, the roadblocks and things. So I'm not making promises. But I will tell you it'll be worth the wait.
I'm looking forward to it. And you've got a live record out, right? Live at Wembley?
Yeah, we just ended up putting that out as well. I'm so glad you have a list in front of you, because I'm like, God, there's so many things going on. But that was wonderful. We ended up, headlining Wembley right before Christmas last year. And what a crazy milestone for honestly, the four of us talk about it all the time too. Like, okay, as we're writing these songs, like, if we're standing on the Wembley stage right now, would this song be worthy of it? It's become this like crazy little mile marker for us. But what a beautiful thing. And I'm so glad we were able to record it and film it and let everybody see that. We don't do enough of that, for as much as we are, 90% of the people that finally understand us and get us and are in it for life, have seen us live. And so for as much of a live band as we are, we don't have enough of those things. So I'm just glad to have it out. And, anybody can get on our YouTube page and watch it and do the thing and, see at least a piece of what we're all about. So it's exciting.
Last question, and I'll let you go. Has singing Skid Row songs and doing this in Skid Row do you think it will have, as you're making a new record, some potential impact on you, an influence on you on the next Halestorm record, whether it's in the way you sing vocally or even in the material?
You know what? I will say absolutely. And I can even say that for a fact because, like I said, I'm pretty sure I'm getting to the point of annoyance with my bandmates, because there'll be certain parts to certain songs, and I'll be doing vocals to a musical bed that we did in the studio, and be like, yeah, but when I do that note, in
my other band,
like, I need something like that in my other band. Yeah, exactly. When I was hanging out with the guys at Skid Row, we were doing it this way. Maybe we can incorporate that into this song. That's basically been a thing for me for a little while. We'll see how far that goes before they kick me out of the studio. But it's been, I'm a sponge in a lot of different ways, and this is no different. As I do new things and experience new things, you're gathering information. You're putting new tools into your tool belt, into your arsenal. So, I'm looking forward to hearing all the ways, that seeps through in these new songs, hearing all the ways that has influenced me.
No. Well, hey, I know you're busy. I know you got a lot going on. I really appreciate the time. And look, anybody that doubts your Skid Row cred, I mean, you covered Slave to the Grind on an EP with Halestorm. So you are, a true fan, and to have this opportunity, and you're killing it. I mean, everybody's talking amazingly about it, and I know you're having fun with it. And I hope to get out to one of these two shows next weekend and get a chance to see you and those other knuckleheads, and have some time to not only see you do this, but also catch up with everybody. So best of luck with everything. You know where I'm at if you need anything. Halestormrocks.com is the website, and looking forward to the next Halestorm record as well. So thanks so much for the time, Lzzy.
Hell yeah, Eddie. And, we love you, man, and I love you, and I think you're delightful, and I just adore what you've done for the entire community. Those words mean a lot to me coming from you, so I appreciate it. And yeah,
and everything.
And
I appreciate everything you just said. And if Snake was sitting here right now, he would disagree with everything you just said categorically.
yes, he would.
Just to be a jerk.
Oh, if I can, I'll give you just one more before we go. I have been put on the band and crew group text, and I've never been. And that thing is going off every day with something that Snake has said, or some food. We were talking about something with White Castle and food fights earlier today. And I'm getting the full experience.
Save your sanity and leave the group text, or just mute it, or do something. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Lzzy. I appreciate it. Back at you.
Thank you, love.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, hon.
There she goes, everybody. Lzzy Hale. She just, she's too much. She's a legit fan. And, I have so much respect for people who have done great things in their own career, but remain fans, and don't get too full of themselves, too high, too low. And they are fans, and she is that. I remember when Halestorm got signed to Atlantic Records, they were working with there was a guy at the label at the time. His name is Anthony Delia. I've not talked to him in a long time, but he was like their product manager. And he would call me all the time, and he'd tell me, he goes, look, there's this band we signed, Halestorm, and I didn't know who they were. They were not on anyone's radar yet. And he used to tell me, he's like, I think you really like them. They've got they're young, they're super young. Like Lzzy said, she was like 13 when she started. But he's like, they're super young, but they got real old school values. They believe in playing totally live, real. And they love, and the lead singer loves all this 80s stuff. And he's like, you'd really be into them. He started turning me on to their music. And then he also, I remember when they were doing these EPs, he would call me and ask me, this was before I knew her personally. And he would say to me, he goes, hey, Halestorm was wanting to run by you, like, what they're going to do cover EPs. Like, what do you think they should do? Give us some songs or some suggestions or whatever. And, I threw some stuff out at them. Some they did, some they didn't. But Slave to the Grind was one. I didn't recommend that, but they ended up putting on one of those EPs. They also did a great version of Pat Benatar's Hell is for Children on one of those EPs as well. So, lot in that interview, which is really interesting because, and I know this is going to make the news rounds in seconds here. She is not ruling out, it sounds like, in any way, continuing to do this. Now, I would be surprised if it was the long-term solution, just because scheduling could always be a problem. But then again, as I talked about with her, when you work at that, and if you can plan your schedules out far enough in advance, it's doable. Look at Alter Bridge and what they do and how they balance with Miles Kennedy. Miles will do solo stuff. Miles will do Slash. Miles will do Alter Bridge. It's all planned out a couple years in advance. It happens. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. It's really going to come down to, I would think, if Skid Row would want to work around another band's schedule with how much they decide to do going forward and what their workload is going to be like as far as how much they want to play. But it's interesting today, on a day where Snake has said on a podcast that I talked about earlier that they do not plan to go back to Bach. Lzzy, now minutes ago on this show, saying these two shows they have coming up would not be, very likely not the last time she sings in the band. So the plot thickens. I mean, I don't know. The problem is if they try to juggle this and it doesn't work, well, I guess it's no different than where Skid Row's at now. They still have to find a singer. Again, assuming, as Snake has said, they don't want to go back to Bach, which apparently they don't. So we'll see. Never a dull moment here, right? And of course, at some point, I'll get the Skids guys on. As we just talked about, the schedule's been crazy lately. But interesting stuff from Lzzy Hale. And look, make no mistake, she is the only singer of all the singers that Skid Row have had since Sebastian that moves the needle in a big way in terms of draw, publicity, attention. Now, it's not going to move it anywhere near to how it would be moved if they did the original band. But make no mistake, it moves the needle. We had a caller yesterday that called in, went to one of those shows last weekend, and the show was sitting at a few hundred tickets sold, and then they announced Lzzy Hale, and the show sold out at like 1,200. She has a huge following, and it's a different following of people that would normally go to see Skid Row. That registers too. Again, it's a business, this business of music. So a lot to chew on there, really. And we'll see and continue to cover it. Big thanks to Lzzy Hale for that time and real interesting insights there about her experience doing this and the potential future of her doing this. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, I see some phone calls starting to pop in now. Guys want to get a jump on a Free-for-All Friday tomorrow? Certainly can do that. Want to talk to you about your thoughts about what we just heard, your thoughts about anything from the last couple weeks of all these unbelievable interviews that we've had on the show. We'll come right back and jump on the phones for a bit with you guys on Trunk Nation.
Nation with Eddie Trunk, who routinely accuses the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame of voter fraud. SiriusXM's Faction Talk.